The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint aroma of Liam's cologne as Ethan sat at the kitchen table, absently stirring his cup. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the quiet domesticity they had built together over 8 years of marriage. Across from him, Liam flipped through a travel magazine, his excitement bubbling over. "I was thinking," Liam began, his eyes alight with anticipation, "we could go to the Amalfi Coast for our anniversary. Just the two of us, no distractions. Doesn't it sound perfect?" Ethan forced a smile, nodding. "It does. Let's talk about it later." The spark in Liam's expression dimmed slightly, but he quickly masked it with a warm grin. Of course, no rush. Ethan's heart twisted. He adored Liam, his unyielding optimism, his ability to find beauty in even the smallest moments. But lately, something had shifted. Conversations felt heavier, their silences longer. Ethan couldn't pinpoint when the subtle distance between them began, but it gnawed at him. After Liam left for work, the house fell into an oppressive stillness. Ethan's mind wandered to the message that had pinged on his phone late last night. "We need to talk. It's important." The name on the screen had made his pulse quicken. Noah. Noah had entered Ethan's life 6 months ago, an unexpected presence at a mutual friend's gallery opening. There was something magnetic about him, the easy confidence, the way he seemed to see right through Ethan's polished exterior. Their interactions started innocently enough. Casual texts, shared laughs over inside jokes. But somewhere along the way, a line had blurred, and now Ethan found himself standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure whether to pull back or leap. That evening, Liam returned home with a bouquet of sunflowers, Ethan's favorite. "Thought these might brighten the place up," he said, setting them on the counter. "They're beautiful," Ethan replied, but his voice lacked the warmth it once carried. Liam hesitated, studying Ethan with quiet concern. "You've been distant lately. Is something wrong?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Just work stress," he lied, avoiding Liam's gaze. Liam nodded but didn't press further, retreating to the living room. Ethan watched him go, guilt settling heavily in his chest. He wanted to bridge the growing chasm between them, to rekindle the love they had so carefully cultivated. But every time he tried, the thought of Noah lingered like an uninvited guest. Late that night, as Liam slept beside him, Ethan stared at his phone, the unanswered message glowing in the dark. His thumb hovered over the keyboard before typing a single word. When Ethan hit send, his heart pounding. The quiet hum of the phone vibrating moments later confirmed his decision. As he read Noah's reply, a thrill of anticipation surged through him, followed quickly by a wave of guilt. He glanced at Liam, peaceful and oblivious, and felt the weight of his betrayal. Tomorrow everything could change. The cafe was dimly lit, a haven of muted conversations and the rhythmic clink of porcelain cups. Ethan sat in the corner, fidgeting with the edge of his napkin. He checked the time on his phone, his pulse quickening as the door swung open. Noah walked in, his presence commanding the room effortlessly. "Ethan," Noah greeted, sliding into the seat across from him. His voice was smooth, tinged with warmth, and his eyes carried a knowing glint. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Ethan exhaled, feeling the weight of his decision settle. "Neither was I," he admitted, avoiding Noah's gaze. Noah leaned forward, his expression softening. "You don't have to feel guilty for being here. Sometimes you just need someone to talk to." The words were meant to comfort, but they only deepened the ache in Ethan's chest. He thought of Liam, his steady presence, his unwavering love. Yet here he was drawn to someone who offered him something he couldn't quite name. Their conversation started innocuously enough. Noah asked about Ethan's work, his hobbies, and his dreams. But the undertones shifted, becoming heavier with unspoken truths. "You're not happy," Noah said eventually, his voice low. "You don't have to say it. I can see it in your eyes." Ethan tensed, the truth hitting closer than he cared to admit. "It's not that simple," he murmured, his gaze dropping to the untouched coffee before him. Noah reached out, his fingers brushing lightly against Ethan's hand. The contact sent a jolt through him, and he pulled back reflexively. But the moment lingered, charged with an undeniable electricity. "Life's too short to settle," Noah said softly. "Sometimes you have to take a chance on what you really want." Ethan's breath hitched, the words echoing in his mind long after they left Noah's lips. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I should go," he said, his voice strained. Noah didn't stop him, but his parting words lingered as Ethan walked away. "I'm here if you need me." Back home, Liam was in the kitchen, humming softly as he prepared dinner. The sight filled Ethan with a pang of guilt. He forced a smile and kissed Liam on the cheek, trying to push the day's events from his mind. But as they sat together that evening, the distance between them felt insurmountable. Liam was oblivious to the storm raging inside Ethan, and Ethan hated himself for the lies he told with every forced smile and hollow reassurance. That night, as Liam fell asleep beside him, Ethan stared at the ceiling, Noah's words haunting him. "Life's too short to settle." His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He didn't need to check to know who it was. Ethan closed his eyes, torn between the life he had and the one he feared he might need. Rain pattered against the windows as Ethan sat in the dim glow of the living room. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, the name Noah illuminating the screen. He stared at it for a moment, his heart pounding before silencing the call. From the hallway, Liam emerged, his brow furrowed with quiet concern. "You've been distracted all evening," he said gently, wrapping his arms around himself. "Is something bothering you?" Ethan hesitated, the weight of his choices bearing down on him. He couldn't lie anymore, but the truth threatened to shatter everything. "I'm just tired," he replied, his voice hollow. Liam studied him, his silence a palpable force. "Tired of what, Ethan? Of me? Of us?" The words hit harder than Ethan expected, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. His eyes met Liam's, and he saw a flicker of fear and sadness that mirrored his own. "Liam, the words faltered. He wanted to confess everything, to unburden the guilt that had been suffocating him. But the thought of hurting Liam was unbearable. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door, sharp and insistent. Both men turned toward it, confusion etched on their faces. Ethan's stomach dropped. Liam moved to answer, but Ethan grabbed his arm. "Let me get it," he said quickly, his voice tight. Ethan opened the door to find Noah standing there, rain dripping from his coat. The sight of him sent a surge of panic through Ethan. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, stepping outside and closing the door behind him. "I needed to see you," Noah said, his tone calm but resolute. "I can't keep pretending this doesn't mean something." Ethan glanced back at the closed door, his mind racing. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice low. "I had to," Noah insisted. "You're miserable, Ethan. And so am I, waiting for you to figure out what you want." The door creaked open, and Liam stepped outside, his expression a mix of confusion and hurt. "Ethan? Who is this?" Ethan froze, caught between two worlds. He struggled to find the words, but there was no explanation that could undo what had already been done. "Noah," Liam said, realization dawning in his eyes. His voice trembled. "You're Noah." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan saw the betrayal in Liam's face, the trust they'd built crumbling in an instant. "I was going to tell you," Ethan began, but Liam shook his head, stepping back inside and shutting the door firmly behind him. Noah's presence felt suffocating now, the weight of his choices crushing Ethan. "You should go," Ethan whispered. Noah hesitated but nodded, his gaze lingering on Ethan for a moment before disappearing into the rain. Ethan stood there, alone in the storm, his heart heavy with the consequences of his actions. He turned toward the closed door, unsure if it would ever open for him again. The hours after Liam closed the door were suffocatingly quiet. Ethan stood in the rain for a long moment, the chill seeping into his bones. Eventually, he forced himself to go inside. The house was dark except for the faint glow of the living room lamp. Liam was nowhere to be seen. Ethan walked upstairs, his footsteps tentative as though the creak of the floorboards might deepen the fracture between them. He stopped outside their bedroom door, his hand hovering over the knob. When he finally opened it, he found Liam sitting on the edge of the bed, his face shadowed by dim light. Liam didn't look up. "I need you to tell me the truth, Ethan," he said. His voice steady but laced with a quiet pain. Ethan's throat tightened. "I never meant for it to happen," he began, the words spilling out in a rush. "Noah, it was just—" "Don't," Liam interrupted sharply, his gaze snapping up to meet Ethan's. "Don't try to downplay it. Just tell me, did you love him?" Ethan hesitated, the weight of the question pressing down on him. "I don't know," he admitted finally, the words hollow in the stillness. "I think I was looking for something I thought I'd lost." "And did you find it?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. "No," Ethan said quietly, "because it was never about him. It was about me. About being scared that what we had wasn't enough anymore." Liam stood, his movements slow and deliberate. "Do you think that makes this easier to hear?" he asked, his voice breaking. "You betrayed me, Ethan. You didn't just hurt me, you shattered the trust we built." Ethan reached for him, but Liam stepped back, the space between them suddenly insurmountable. "I love you," Ethan said, his voice desperate. "I've always loved you. I lost sight of what we have." Liam's expression softened, but the hurt in his eyes remained. "Love isn't just a feeling, Ethan. It's a choice. And you chose someone else." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Liam sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I need time," he said. "Time to figure out if I can forgive this. If I can trust you again." Ethan nodded, his heart sinking. "Take all the time you need," he whispered, knowing there was nothing else he could say. That night, Ethan lay alone in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. The echoes of his choices played over and over in his mind, a relentless reminder of what he'd risked and lost. In the morning, Liam was gone. A note on the kitchen counter simply read, "I'll call when I'm ready." Ethan held the note tightly, the faint hope of reconciliation battling the crushing weight of his guilt. The house felt impossibly empty, and for the first time in years, Ethan wasn't sure if he had a future worth fighting for.